Old Peter Grimes made fishing his employ. His wife he cabined with him and his boy, and seemed that life laborious to enjoy. To town came quiet Peter with his fish, and had of all a civil word and wish. He left his trade upon the Sabbath day, and took young Peter in his hand to pray. But soon the stubborn boy from care broke loose, at first refused, then added his abuse. His father's love he scorned, his power defied, but, being drunk, wept sorely when he died. Yes, then he wept, and to his mind there came much of his conduct, and he felt the shame, how he had oft the good old man reviled, and never paid the duty of a child, how, when the father in his Bible read, he in contempt and anger left the shed. "It is the word of life," the parent cried. "This is the life itself," the boy replied. And while old Peter in amazement stood, gave the hot spirit to his boiling blood, how he, with oath and furious speech, began to prove his freedom and assert the man. And when the parent checked his impious rage, how he had cursed the tyranny of age, nay, once had dealt the sacrilegious blow on his bare head, and laid his parent low. The father groaned. "If thou art old," said he, "and hast a son, thou wilt remember me. Thy mother left me in a happy time. Thou kill'st not her, heaven spares the double crime." On an inn settle in his maudlin grief, this he revolved, and drank for his relief. Now lived the youth in freedom, but debarred from constant pleasure, and he thought it hard that he could not every wish obey, but must awhile relinquish ale and play, hard that he could not to his cards attend, but must acquire the money he would spend. With greedy eye he looked on all he saw, he knew not justice, and he laughed at law. On all he marked he stretched his ready hand, he fished by water, and he filched by land. Oft in the night has Peter dropped his oar, fled from his boat, and sought for prey on shore. Oft up the hedgerow glided, on his back bearing the orchard's produce in a sack, or farmyard load tugged fiercely from the stack. And as these wrongs to greater numbers rose, the more he looked on all men as his foes. He built a mud-walled hovel, where he kept his various wealth, and there he ofttimes slept. But no success could please his cruel soul. He wished for one to trouble and control. He wanted some obedient boy to stand and bear the blows of his outrageous hand, and hoped to find in some propitious hour a feeling creature subject to his power. Peter had heard there were in London then, still have they been, workhouse clearing men, who, undisturbed by feelings just or kind, would parish boys to needy tradesmen bind. They in their want a trifling sum would take, and toiling slaves of piteous orphans make. Such Peter sought, and when a lad was found, the sum was dealt him, and the slave was bound. Some few in town observed in Peter's trap a boy with jacket blue and woollen cap, but none inquired how Peter used the rope, or what the bruise that made the stripling stoop. None could the ridges on his back behold, none sought him shivering in the winter's cold, none put the question, "Peter, dost thou give the boy his food? What man the lad must live? Consider, Peter, let the child have bread, he'll serve thee better if he's stroked and fed." None reasoned thus, and some, on hearing cries, said calmly, "Grimes is at his exercise." Pinned, beaten, cold, pinched, threatened, and abused, his efforts punished and his food refused, awake tormented, soon aroused from sleep, struck if he wept, and yet compelled to weep, the trembling boy dropped down and strove to pray, received a blow, and trembling turned away, or sobbed and hid his piteous face, while he, the savage master, grinned in horrid glee. He'd now the power he ever loved to show, a feeling being subject to his blow. Thus lived the lad in hunger, peril, pain, his tears despised, his supplications vain, compelled by fear to lie, by need to steal, his bed uneasy and unblessed his meal. For 3 sad years the boy his tortures bore, and then his pains and trials were no more. "How died he, Peter?" When the people said, he growled, "I found him lifeless in his bed." Then tried for softer tone, and sighed, "Poor Sam is dead." Yet murmurs were there, and some questions asked, how he was fed, how punished, and how tasked. Much they suspected, but they little proved, and Peter passed untroubled and unmoved. Another boy with equal ease was found, the money granted and the victim bound. And what his fate? One night it chanced he fell from the boat's mast, and perished in her well, where fish were living kept, and where the boy, so reasoned men, could not himself destroy. "Yes, so it was," said Peter, "in his play, for he was idle both by night and day. He climbed the mainmast and then fell below." Then showed his corpse and pointed to the blow. What said the jury? They were long in doubt, but sturdy Peter faced the matter out. So they dismissed him, saying at the time, "Keep fast your hatchway when you've boys who climb." This hit the conscience, and he coloured more than for the closest questions put before. Thus all his fears the verdict set aside, and at the slave shop Peter still applied. Then came a boy of manners soft and mild. Our seamen's wives with grief beheld the child. Passive he laboured, till his slender frame bent with his loads, and he at length was lame. Strange that a frame so weak could bear so long the grossest insult and the foulest wrong. But there were causes. In the town they gave fire, food, and comfort to the gentle slave, and though stern Peter with a cruel hand and knotted rope enforced the rude command, yet he considered what he lately felt, and his vile blows with selfish pity dealt. One day such draughts the cruel fisher made, he could not vent them in his borough trade, but sailed for London mart. The boy was ill, but ever humbled to his master's will, and on the river where they smoothly sailed, he strove with terror and a while prevailed, but new to danger on the angry sea, he clung affrighted to his master's knee. The boat grew leaky, and the wind was strong. Rough was the passage, and the time was long. His liquor failed, and Peter's wrath arose. No more is known. The rest we must suppose, or learn of Peter. Peter says he spied the stripling's danger, and for harbour tried. Meantime the fish, and then the apprentice died. The pitying women raised a clamour round, and weeping said, "Thou hast thy apprentice drowned."